Jason Jani from Team DMS, and today we're bringing you another episode of The Formula, but today we get to spend some time with this legend right here, Mr. Chris Cox. Legendary producer, remix artist, just party rocker, the whole deal. I appreciate you and thank you so much.
Oh, it's my pleasure, and of course I'll do anything for my boys at DMS.
I love it. The whole community has supported your work for a long time, and you just have an interesting story and have done so much. I guess if I could start anywhere, let's kind of start at the beginning. Like, how'd you get into this? Like, kind of give me the backstory on...
Well, okay. Well, I mean, I started DJing, actually so I grew up in a small town up in northern Nevada, in Carson City, and one year when I was like 14, we got a roller rink, and it was like the only social thing to do, and so I was just there all the time, and I got into skating really heavy, and one day the DJ didn't show up, and it was like old people that ran the place, and they're like, does anyone know how to turn on this equipment? And I was a total stereo nut, and I'd been buying records since I was 10. I'm like, I can. And so I played records for like a bunch of little kids on Sunday afternoon. And they're like, well, do you want to come back and play? I'm like, yes. And it just became a job at like 14 at this roller rink. And it was just like the pinnacle of, you know, the social thing and like going into high school and stuff.
What were some of the records back then, if you don't, do you remember any
totally
call-outs?
Well, I mean, if you're gonna put on if it's speed skate, you got to put on Heart Barracuda, of course, or Ozzy Osbourne Crazy Train. Yes, it was a small town, and then whatever. And I remember I remember this. There was like this little Latin kid that lived in Sacramento, and he would come in every now and then, and it was the first time I started seeing 12 inches. And I remember he brought in like Double Dutch Bus, and he brought in like, you know, some of the Sugar Hill stuff, like Eighth Wonder, and my head exploded. I remember he gave me a copy of Rapper's Delight. I couldn't have it, but I took it home and I recorded it onto cassette so I could play it, because there was no record store in the town. And I remember like memorizing the whole 15-minute like version, and I was just devouring all this stuff that was coming.
So okay, so we're going back, right?
Yeah, this is way back.
We're talking about Eighth Wonder, we're talking about Sugar Hill, we're talking about...
And they were still kind of like older records. They weren't like entirely current, but it was all new to me.
100%. So how does someone get from like a roller rink to being one of the most successful producers?
It's just, I mean, the next step was I came to college in Las Vegas. I went to UNLV on a music scholarship. Okay. So I played saxophone, kind of paid for the college. Actually, the guy who sat next to me through all of college is now Jimmy Kimmel's band leader, Cleto Escobedo. And
wow.
It was like, you know, and I was just immersed in music, but then at the same time, because I cut my teeth as a DJ, I got a job as a wedding DJ. Wow. And so on the weekends, that's what I was doing, was gigging. And this was like Las Vegas before there was ever a club on the Strip. Wow. So it was like the Wild West. So I was doing fraternity parties, weddings, and then eventually got into the convention and corporate scene, you know, with 6 crates of vinyl and huge ass speakers, and going into like all these casinos and playing like these corporate gigs.
Now, did you have your own company, or did you work?
No, I worked for another company.
Okay.
Actually, the guy that ran that company later on became like a big guy at Metro, was like the #2 police officer and the whole thing. But it was just like, yeah, it was this. I was just hired on for another company, and then I started working at the campus radio station at KUNV, and that was just like, you know, once again, I just wanted to be immersed in music 24/7. So I'm studying music in the daytime, I'm DJing at night, I'm DJing for anywhere there's people that want to hear music. I'm just forcing myself on everyone. Started doing the radio station. We did a radio station remote at a nightclub, and the minute I walked in the club, it was like, I was still like underage, and I was just like, this is what I want to do.
Do you remember the name of the club?
That was well, the first club was the Elephant Bar on Maryland Parkway, and but the one that changed my life was Chaz, the Ultimate Nightclub. And it was like this, it was just this, you know, it was like the late 80s, and the guys had come from Miami and New York, so it was like a total like New York style thing. They used to have a house band, and I'd play in between the house band and, you know, whatever, you know, Miami Sound Machine, Conga, and Michael Jackson, all that stuff. Yeah. And then I'd go to New York for New Music Seminar, go record shopping, and then, you know, discovered house music. And
where'd you spend your time in New York? Do you remember the stores you used to go?
Oh, Vinyl Mania on 14 Carmine Street.
Yeah.
And then later on 8 Ball and DJ Records and Satellite. And and I would just, and you know, I went there, once again, I was DJing on a fake ID for years. And I wanted a fake ID not so I could drink, but just so I could be in the club, so I could play music. And so, yeah, I would go to New York, you know, spend all my money on records, come back with all these records that would clear the floor. I mean, I remember first hearing raw bass in New York going, this record's amazing, coming back, playing it, clearing the floor for 6 or 8 months, and then suddenly, you know, people wanting to hear it 3 times a night.
They weren't ready.
They're never ready. And it's so funny because we were talking to all the people back in the day of like the casinos, like, why don't you do a nightclub in the casino? Because you've got all the production, all the sound, all the lighting, because we do the corporate gigs and it's like, why isn't there just a club here?
Yeah.
And everyone's like, no, there's never going to be a casino in Las Vegas, because, or never going to be a nightclub in a casino, because if people are in the club, they're not gambling, they're not spending money there, they're just, and now, you know, like, Jesus.
Never say never. That's the takeaway right here.
Never say
okay,
never.
So now we're back in Vegas, clearing dance floors, but picking the right music, kind of whatever. So how did you get from playing kind of like your local area, it doesn't matter that it's Las Vegas, right? To get into like the next level of like building records and developing a name.
So that started, so I took there was only one studio course at UNLV at the time. There was a 1 semester MIDI course, and so it was just learning early. It was Performer at the time, like version 1 on an old black and white Mac, and I just started learning MIDI sequencing, and once again, I'm listening to records going, I know this version's different than this version, because it was like the early remixes that I was getting into, like guys like Shep Pettibone and like all these guys that were, you know, the New York sound.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, they're making other music, but I didn't know how to do it. So I was just kind of like learning on my own and just kind of like learning the programs and learning different sounds and just sitting in a room. And then the big thing that happened for me was, remember remix services?
Yeah.
So Hot Tracks was one of the oldest remix service.
Yeah.
The original producer of it had passed away, and it was left to his family who lived in Vegas. Yeah. And so they were looking for a new producer for this thing, and so they started asking around in like clubs, radio stations, and recording studios who could be a new producer. And because I was involved, my name came up in all places.
Wow.
So I didn't know how to remix, I didn't know how to edit, I knew how to sequence a little, and I knew how to do cassette deck edits.
Yeah.
And so I basically lied my way into the job, said, oh, I know how to do this, of course. So I got the gig, and they're like, okay, well, you know, we got to do our first issue. And I'm like, I don't know how to edit. And so I went to the radio station and had the production guys show me how to cut tape on the reel-to-reel.
Wow.
And then I would go into at night when the radio station, all the production people would leave, and I would just stay there all night and learn how to edit and start making edits on the reel-to-reel until the morning show came in, and I had to be out of there.
That's insane.
And so I started, and we had to put out compilations every month, which got me talking to the record labels, which got me, and if you hear the first issues I was on, like I didn't know what I was doing, but every issue or every mix I would do, I would learn like a new technique.
Yeah.
And it was honestly just sitting in a room by myself and being curious and listening to stuff going, I don't know how to do that, because there was no YouTube. There would be a couple of magazines around, but I really was just alone. And then maybe I'd meet somebody, or somebody would come. I remember, like, you know, Jelly Bean came in my club one time in Vegas, or Cameron Paul, these guys. And I'd kind of ask a couple of questions, and I'd be given some little nugget of information that I would go, and then I would just sit in the room and go, how the hell did I do? And I would listen to things. And that's how, like, I used to DJ with like 4 turntables and a sampler, because somebody brought in from New York, they brought in a cassette tape of Little Louie Vega live. It was like the Hot 103 dance party or something like this, and I'm hearing all these records. It was like the early Todd Terry stuff, like Bango and Day in the Life, and I'm hearing all these records going, this is amazing, how did he do this? Thinking that it was a live DJ. So I thought, oh, I need more turntables, because he's cutting from this sample to this sample, but then there's a backbeat. So I'm learning to do all this shit live, not realizing that he was making tapes and playing a reel-to-reel or playing a MIDI. So I was trying to make, so as a result, I ended up sharpening a lot of skills by the complete lack of knowing how to do it and just kind of making up something.
This is so sick. So like, okay, so so you got your feet wet, you've got the home base, your hometown, a lot of love, different areas, got the record label stuff going, right? Now let's fast forward 600 plus records later, and here we are, right?
Yeah.
So like, let's talk about the creative process for a second. Like when you start to work on a track, and not to go into like the granular details, but like, can you kind of take me through like a high level process on like how you kind of like organize your thoughts to kind of like
Absolutely.
get it together?
Well, you know, a lot of it depends on like, you know, if a label hires me or an artist hires me, a lot of times they have an agenda of like why they're hiring me. Okay, we need a crossover mix for radio. We need a mix for the Billboard clubs. We need a mix for this. So if I know an area that they do for that, kind of steers it a little bit.
So like end in mind is kind of like first.
Yeah, definitely. And a lot of times, like the best thing for me is to determine like who, you know, who is the end audience.
Right.
You know, all right, is this going to be, you know, is this artist bigger in the gay scene or the straight scene? Is it a hip hop thing? Is it a, you know, whatever, open format, you know, house banger? And that kind of helps me, because if the worst thing for me is if somebody just goes, just do whatever you want on it. If there's an open canvas, it's too many ideas come. I don't know. I need to have a little point of reference. It may not even end up being there, but it's like having a destination on the map gets you at least moving.
So like when you have starting the creative process, you think about where you need to go first, right?
Exactly.
And then where do you start on the track? Do you start with kind of the vocal? Do you start on kind of like?
Well, I
like
always pride myself, especially because I get hired for a lot of pop and commercial artists, which are vocal driven. I always pay respect to vocals and the song first, which is why a lot of really big name voices come back to me, because like you can speed anything up and put a 4/4 kick under anything, but it doesn't necessarily mean it sounds good.
Right.
A lot of times, especially like some of the software, like, you know, things get billy goated, things get weird, and so I like to pride myself on making something that sounds like they went in the studio and recut it, even though it's a faster tempo and a different feel.
Kind of holding true to like the original.
Yeah,
frame
because as a remixer, my goal is, or my job really is to put this thing on a pedestal and put it in a light, because a remix is, you know, we're put on to help the entire production. You're part of the promotional push, and you are an artistic part of it, but the whole reason you exist is to get that song broken into another scene that wouldn't be playing it by the normal version. And so that's why they're hiring me. And so usually it's basically just a kick, a clap, and a vocal. I always start with just the acapella or a drumapella. And because if you have the whole thing, you know, you take somebody like Janet Jackson, the vocals, there's so many levels of background vocals and so much harmonic structure. If you just get the vocal right over the drums, the whole record is already kind of shaped, because it's so full musically with just the vocals. Now there's a lot of, you know, some newer artists and some new things, maybe the vocals aren't as strong, and then you got to start putting coats of paint on it to make it, you know, like way cooler. But I always start with vocals first, because with me, I am an accompanist to the song, and I want to serve the song and the artist first.
I tell you, like your kind of portfolio really speaks for itself. I mean, you have some things you're probably incredibly proud of, and I know just like knowing your
and there's
work,
some dogs in there too.
But I don't think you could span as much content and not have things that like maybe didn't connect or whatever. And
that's part of it. I mean, you know, the more shots on goal you take, the more chances you have of something working, but you're going to have a whole bunch of garbage behind you.
So let me ask. So I want to kind of take that in two directions. Let's start with like, what's like a project you're probably most proud of, like in your portfolio? Is there one that just kind of sticks out to say like, hey, this was a defining moment in time that like pushed my career to another level, or something that just?
Well, the easy one to go to is the, you know, Whitney Houston. It's not right, but it's okay, because, you know, it became the thing that, you know, helped me to work for the next decade, and was such a massive hit that I wasn't even aware it was becoming a hit, because I was just in the studio in LA working and kind of hearing these reports of it's on New York at KTU, or Junior played it for 20 minutes last night at Twilo, or like, you know, hearing these like little things are happening.
I think I was probably at that club when that happened.
And so kind of getting those, so when the snowball rolled down the hill, was so busy working, didn't get to really like sit and bask in it. One of the really big ones for me that was a personal pride was Christina Aguilera Hurt, because for some reason it was just at a time when, I don't know, I was going through a bunch of shit with my life, but the vocal is so strong and the song is so strong. And I remember it was something I was just like having a big wrestling match in the studio, but there was something that happened in that. I just think there's magic in that mix, and I'm really, really proud of it on a few levels. And it's funny because I remember driving home from the studio that day, and I was just like listening, and I've been up for like, 35 hours at the end trying to make the deadline. And I remember listening to it in the car, and just like tears just started running down my face, partially because of fatigue, but also because I just thought it was so effing good and so gorgeous. And I was just like, I kind of at that point, I'm like, I can't remix anything anymore. Like, nothing's going to be better than this. Like, I was just so, and that's one of those ones, like, it's taken me a lot of places around the world because it really connected with a lot of people emotionally as well as being a record. So when there are times like that, like when you have a really good singer and a good song, you can make a good remix just by staying out of the way and just letting them do their thing. And then, but when I get to really push my abilities and talents all the way with somebody else who's already done that, then that's when the magic happens.
Really cool. So with the process of remixing now, right now that you're established, you've developed a personal kind of brand known for just creating magic for a lot of people. Do you spend a lot of time with the artists, or are you dealing mainly with like kind of the company supporting the tracks?
It depends, and a lot of them are, every situation's different. Like I've had some things, one day I got a call and it's like, hey, can I give your number to Diana Ross? And it's like, yeah, sure. And I'm about to board a plane in Chicago and I get a call and it's like, hi, this is Diana Ross. I'm like, hi, Diana, I'm a huge fan of your work. Can we work together? And I'm like, yeah, I think we can work that out, and so there's those things like that. And then there's other ones where I don't even know if the artist even knows about it because it was through, a manager or a label, something like that. So obviously the more connected I can be, the more gratifying it is because it's fun. And I got in this business partially because I like creating with other people. And so when an artist is part of the process, or when they come in to like recut the vocals because maybe they did an R&B song, but there's different phrasings to make it a dance record, that's like way better. But I've got to meet a lot of the bigger names, and people are usually really appreciative, and that's obviously gratifying beyond anything to know that artists are very passionate about their work. So if you take their work and do something different, there's some people that are like, don't touch it, I made the perfect record, don't you dare touch it. And a lot of people don't like remixes. So when they like it, like, oh my God, I love what you did, or I never would have thought that, and I'm so proud of this, that's the most gratifying thing in the world.
I think it's awesome. Now, let's kind of shift directions really quick, because a lot of the community at DMS are DJs in the hustle, playing events, whether they're local events or national events or traveling the world. I mean, DMS.
I always call it like the real world working DJs.
Right. So and you spend a lot of time still playing, right, and traveling and in it. So let's talk about some of your events. Like, how do you prep for a show? Do you kind of have like an idea? Like, do you speak with kind of the people that are hosting?
Definitely. If it's a corporate event, of course. Like, the more info I can get, the better. I want to know, the amount of people, the demographics, the time of day. That is this going to be like a bar mixer? Is this going to be their blowout end of the seminar party? What's the type of industry? And absolutely. And the more are there other entertainers? The more info, just the better you can do. Because that is one thing. Having been through the trenches myself, I DJ a lot in the house world and the circuit world, and I've done festivals and stuff. But when you do like a corporate event or a special event, it's a different set of muscles you end up using. And I never played a prepared playlist. I never do the same set twice. It's always just catered to the room and just making sure that like, okay, let's make this like the best it could possibly be.
I think it's good. Now, do you have a track, like a go-to track that you kind of always have as like a staple in your set, whether it's something that you created or like
Earth, Wind, and Fire, September. Like for corporates, like if you're doing corporates and stuff like that, that's always like, okay, we need to. Well, now thank God for Bruno Mars, because all your corporate gigs, those are like, okay, I need something that's kind of old school, but it's still modern for the younger people. Thank you, Bruno Mars, middle of the road.
Yep.
And so for those corporate kind of things, for the house things and for like bigger things like that, it's really going to depend, because obviously a song that everyone knows reigns supreme, and hopefully like some cool ass mix of it that somebody hasn't heard for a while. You know, there's a couple of, you know, secret weapons that are just always there in case I need to go, but I try not to pull the same stuff all the time, just because then if you ever go to that crowd another time, they're like, we heard this already. You know, you want to try to still make it fresh every time.
I love it, and I think that will resonate with our community quite a bit. Now, I want to kind of close out with a couple of things. First off, let's talk about projects that you have in the works, right? So we talk about, we've talked about production, we've talked about now playing live and presentation. I think you have something else on the kind of the horizon, and I'd like to
yeah, well, it's cool because one of the things I've been doing, you know, I've had a couple of labels in the past, and I'm always known for, you know, big banging, you know, up-tempo stuff, but I've just been, I'm always exploring other things musically, and with our boy Warren Peace from DMS, like, he and I have been spending a lot of time together, and we've been kind of like putting together this new label and new venture that's all going to be chill out. And it's label's called Boogie Chill. First single comes out at the end of March, and we're gonna start rolling like a whole bunch of singles out. But it's chill out music, but it's not like no beat massage music, but it's all. But I've noticed that I've noticed that for some reason lately, like chill out has become all deep house. Like if you listen to XM Chill, it's all deep house, and that wasn't like where I started. Chill out was always the other room at the rave where you still want to party, but you just want to like turn everything down. And so it's like low BPM music, but with like kind of head nodding hip hop kind of vibe. And so it's a little bit of throwback 70s funk, a little bit of throwback to early 90s rave, but still like musical and kind of rich textures, but yeah, but still like instrumental and vibes, and just kind of background music that you can just kind of nod your head on. So it could work at a, you know, doing homework, chilling with a glass of wine, or like a hotel lobby, you know. So just, but something that, you know, there's a little bit of groove and you're doing a little bit of this, but it's not, you know, like EDM where it's like, yeah, getting your attention all the time.
Now, is there like a social media platform or anything that you're specifically looking at to kind of like expand, you know, I guess the reach of this label or any of the projects?
My
like what your
social game sucks, and I need to work on it so bad. But one of the problems is because the only time I remember like really doing stuff is when I'm sitting in airports, because when I'm in the studio, the blinders get put on, and I don't know, so many people like they'll do so much video from the studio. I don't know how the hell they're actually working on the music. Like I'm always working, and so I'll work on projects and people were like, I didn't know you did that. I'm like, because I'm not sitting there going, here's a flyer, here's a flyer, here's a flyer.
Here I am, check it out,
you know, what's up? And a lot of times I work on these projects that I can't really talk about until they actually come out. So, I mean, I'm probably more active on Instagram than anything else because it's the easiest and it's the most initially gratifying. I'm trying to ramp it up this year. I used to be really good on it. And then basically, when I go absent on social media, it means I'm working really hard. And the harder I'm working, the more absent, which is completely the opposite of what it should be, because I should be blasting everything. But sometimes it just seems a little obnoxious, but then people don't know I'm there. So I'm wrestling with that every day.
I want to ask you really quick, because, you know, like your story is incredibly inspiring, and I'm not just saying that. I mean, as someone that supported your music as a DJ for a considerable amount of time, it's just awesome to spend some time with you. Let me ask, like, if you can give a piece of advice to someone that's coming up in the game, whether it's a DJ, a producer, someone looking to kind of get in the business, someone that's maybe sitting in the mobile world trying to cross over, someone that's in the club world looking to go to another level.
There's always, no matter what level you hit, there's always something else that you want to do. And I know, you know, I've been with very established superstars who are still never satisfied. There's still always another thing to go for. And honestly, the main advice, which is what I did and what I still do, is it's just time in the chair, man. You gotta spend the time doing it. It's like people that want to learn a language and like, I got a Rosetta Stone and I spend half hour a month. How come I don't speak Spanish? You know, and it's just like, you need to put in time. And the computer, with everything being online, with the amount of notifications popping up, and this damn thing right here, are the killers of creativity. Because every time you'll start to like learn something or get something going on, there's just interruptions. So one of the biggest things, and when I really want to like either learn something or get something done, I put the phone in the farthest room of the place, and I just focus and lock in, because you're not really dialed in for the first 20 to 30 minutes of working at anything. And you can't just constantly have this start-stop. So it's really just getting something and learning something inside out. The other big thing is, like, on the technical aspect, like, there's every VST, every plug-in, everything imaginable. Learn one thing, learn one synth. If you're in Ableton, learn, the sampler, or learn, like, whatever, Serum, or something that is like one element, and just know it inside out. Like, you could make an entire track with one plugin.
So don't become a jack of all trades.
Don't just go, because then what happens is, once you've got that, it's just like having, a whole glossary of a language. You put that in your pocket. Now you open another thing. Now I'm going to get into Nexus. All right, let me figure out everything about this. I know how to do it. And then what happens is, you're just a mechanic with a knowledge of your tools, and then the ideas come, and you know how to execute them. But if you're just staring at a list of plugins, going, I need to make a bass line. What should I pick now? You've already lost momentum. But if you just get something up and just start working, and also the other thing is, don't get hung up. Tutorials are great for learning how to do something and learning how to get things, but don't just copy what somebody's doing in a tutorial. Actually, like, learn the technique of what they're doing and apply it to your thing. Because a lot of people do, like, how do I make a Skrillex bass sound? Oh, let me watch this thing. I'll set the thing, and just like the guy said it there, but you don't really know what it's doing. So it's like learning your craft, just like with DJing, man. Don't just take somebody else's playlist and go, these tracks work with a crowd. Play in front of people as much as possible. Lose the floor 15 times, and you know what not to do. Get a floor rocking 100 times, and you also know what to do. But don't repeat the same thing. Learn the skill set that you know how to actually do it, and not just copy something else.
It's gold right there. That's the hustle. That's what it's all about. So to close this out, let's talk about, we talked about Instagram. What's the handle on Instagram? How can people follow your path and all that
Instagram
stuff?
And Twitter is DJ Chris Cox. Chris Cox Official on Facebook, and chriscox.net on the web.
That's dope, and we're going to make sure that we share that in the description field of this video, so you can stay dialed into this legend right here and keep up with all the sick projects he has going on. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much. On behalf of Team DMS, I want to thank you for checking out this version of the formula. Be sure to subscribe to All Things DMS right here, and be sure to check back sometime in the future to see some more behind the scenes kind of interviews and episodes of the formula.
Get it? That's
What's up, what's up, what's up? It's Jason Jani from The Formula, standing here with the man himself, Mr. Chris Cox, legendary producer, just master right here. And we're gonna do a minute with. So let's put 60 seconds up on the clock and get started.
the clock.
Ding. All right, let's go. Okay, so CDJs or turntables?
CDJs.
Any software of choice?
Currently Ableton.
What about to play?
Soft record box if I'm using controllers.
Favorite track of all time?
Mars Pump Up the Volume.
Favorite artist of all time?
Prince.
Favorite Prince song?
International Lover.
Have you been to a concert lately?
Yes. I went and saw Diana Ross a week ago as her guest.
Favorite video game growing up?
Tetris.
Do you have any pets?
Yes.
Name.
I have a dog named Hamilton, and he's amazing.
Favorite late night food snack?
Pizza.
Favorite city to play?
Sao Paulo, Brazil.
Largest event you've ever played?
22,000 people, Lollapalooza, Chicago.
How many #1 dance records do you have?
56.
I gotta stop for a second on that one. How many photos do you have on your phone?
Something like 14,000.
And if you were doing anything other than what you're doing now, what would you be doing as a career, as a lifestyle?
I would be a middle of the road comedian, grinding it, and hopefully trying to get in a writer's room in Hollywood on a comedy show.
There you have it, a minute with this man right here, Chris Cox. On behalf of Team DMS, want to thank you for taking some time to chop it up with us. Be sure to check back for the episode interview with this man being posted in just a little bit.
Yeah.